Rachel White is a cocktail waitress at a truck stop strip club in an interstate cowtown in Central California. As her life spirals out of control, poverty and paranoia force her to make a string of increasingly desperate decisions. Decisions that will lead her to the Hell Patrol, a paramilitary organization of hot rod driving mercenaries that hunt demons for fame and fortune. This is Hell Patrol Origins.
Well, it looks like this chapter is going to have a lot of car porn, a lot of gun porn, and yours truly, Jim Jack Cooter, mechanic extraordinaire. This is Hell Patrol Origin, Chapter 11.
Thank you, Cooter. The next 2 days were a wild blur of decadent sex. Rachel wondered why she even bothered to bring her clothes with her at all. When Johnny was home, they were locked in a coital embrace. There was a new fury, an enhanced passion in his lovemaking. So furious that I tripped over the sentence. Rachel knew that he wouldn't come out and say it, but he was afraid of her being maimed or killed in Hell Patrol, and wanted to make his time with her count. Rachel felt bad about making him worry about her, but only during the hours he was at work. Once he walked in the door, his jeans hit the floor so fast that there was no time to talk about it, which worked just fine for Rachel. She didn't want to deal with her own growing feelings for him. She knew she would get hurt. There were a lot of other women, and she knew all of them too. All good things came to an end when Henry showed up again. Johnny was at work, and Rachel was sitting on the couch when she heard his car pull up to the curb. Saw the unmistakable armored profile of that Hell Patrol Monaro. She got up and opened the door before he was even out of the car. Met him on the porch. "You been busy?" Henry asked. Rachel didn't know what he was talking about at first. Then she realized that her hair was unkempt. There were obvious hickeys on her neck, and all her clothes, even her clean clothes, were wrinkled. It occurred to her that she probably should have been embarrassed, but she didn't consider herself a good girl, so she wasn't. "Shut up," she said, dismissing the topic. "What's up?" "Your car's done. Windows are screened, the whole thing's caged up and piped up inside and out. You got dual 30 caliber party poppers on the roof wired to the wheel. Cooter really outdid himself." "Can we go see it?" Rachel asked. "Fuck yeah, we can. But there's something more important you need to know." "What's more important than my badass car?" Rachel asked. "Driving it. You're doing it tomorrow. I'm taking you out with my crew on a zombie hunt. We're gonna teach you how to mow the lawn. The vacation's over. It's time for your first assignment." Rachel was surprised to note that she was more excited than fearful, that she wanted to see the car, and the zombies, and Henry's friends. "Come on, hop in, we'll go check out your ride," he said. Rachel walked around to the left side of the car, remembering that the Monaro was right-hand drive. She pulled open the door, sat down inside, and waited for Henry to start it up. "Who else is coming?" she asked. "You mean my crew, or your graduating class?" "Both, I guess." "Well, you're the one coming with me out of your group of new hires. I cherry-picked the drivers. The rest of your people in their Crown Vics, they're going on a zombie run with another vet. Don't worry, they won't let them get hurt. But you..." "I can drive," Rachel said. "You can drive." "Yeah, that makes you special. Not a lot of tieflings can. I couldn't at first either, but now I'm decent. Lipstick couldn't at first, but she put in some laps at a racing school. Now she's a stone-cold killer behind the wheel. That means out of Everyone I know in Hell Patrol, we got 3 real drivers, myself included, and me only barely," he explained. "Who's Lipstick?" Rachel asked. "Oh yeah, that's her nickname. She drives a fair lady. You'll see her tomorrow. You'll meet her and my boy Dajiban." "Why are you obsessed with collecting tieflings that have real driving skill?" Rachel asked. "Seems to me that everything I've been told about Hell Patrol, a tiefling can make do with brute force and big guns." "Yeah, that is true to a point. But to hit the real big bounties, to get the good shit, you have to have someone who can drive. Someone who can play bait car, who can play chicken with the demons or outrun them. Someone who won't get caught." "You think I'm that good?" Rachel asked. "I think you're capable of being that good. We'll see if I can get you there." Henry turned the corner and drove down the street to the old jail, brought the Monaro right up to the gated entrance, waved at a security camera. The airlock-style prison gates opened remotely, and Henry pulled through. Rachel saw the yard and the makeshift test track. Felt like it was only yesterday that she was putting laps on it to prove herself. She looked directly to her left, saw a line of Crown Vics, the same ones that had been assigned to the other drivers in her class. She didn't think anything about them had changed at first, but on second glance, she saw the improvements. The old Ford cop cars had been refitted from the ground up. There were metal pipes surrounding the cars, protecting the edges of the bodywork. Rachel figured out by looking at them that they were welded to the rails under the body. The police bump bars were beefed up with extra scrap metal to make some kind of Mad Max Psycho cow catcher, and each car had a pair of machine guns bolted to the roof. The windows were covered with a fence-like screen to protect the glass. "Does my car look like that?" Rachel asked. "In a sense. That's the basic setup. When Cooter likes you, or he likes your car, he puts a little more heart and soul into it. You'll see." They pulled up to the front of the garage structure and saw the unmistakable silhouette of Rachel's '69 Polara parked out front, obscured by a line of cars that were being worked on. Henry stopped the Monaro, opened the door, and called out to Cooter. Cooter came out of the garage, grease up to his elbows, a welding apron on, and a pair of safety glasses perched on his nose. He spat an oily, disgusting wad of black tobacco spit on the ground at his feet, nearly splashing the toe of his own boot. He didn't seem to care.
"Y'all about to witness my life's work," he said. "So you best not fuck it up, Henry."
"Henry? I'm not the one driving it. I'm taking my Monaro," he said. Rachel stared at Cooter. She couldn't decide if there was some kind of subtext she didn't catch, or if Cooter was just a rampaging sexist that didn't address women if he could aim his insults at a man instead. Rachel decided that it might be a mix of both, but then he explained it himself.
"I ain't worried about her. She gonna do what she gonna do. I made peace with that. But you know the ropes and she don't. So if she don't bring that car back code 1, I'm gonna beat the red out of your monkey demon ass."
Cooter has a funny way of talking. When he threatens to beat the demonic color out of your skin, that means he respects you, Henry said to Rachel, smiling back at Cooter. Rachel wasn't sure if he really meant that, or if he was just saying it to irritate Cooter even more. She couldn't decide how irritated Cooter actually was, if he actually was. She just decided that Cooter was an abrasive, irritable person.
"Well, y'all might as well take a look at it while it's not covered in zombie parts," he shrugged, and he pointed a wrench at the Polara.
They walked closer to the car to take a look. Rachel could see that, like the Crown Vics, there was a basket of steel pipes around the trailing edges of the body to protect the car from impact, welded to the rails. However, this time, not only were the lines of the piping different to match the profile of a different vehicle, they were also more thorough. She noticed that there were more support struts. They were a thicker, heavier steel. They also didn't stop at the wheel wells, but instead threw a custom machined bar over the wheels so that there was a continuous frame of steel all the way around. It reminded Rachel of a psychobilly bumper car.
I see you're admiring the handiwork. Good eye, it's popped up inside and out. The cage is one of the cleanest I've ever welded. I ripped out the interior and piped in a racing cage too. The panels are a full Eleanor job. Anywhere I could get under the skin, I piped aluminum or steel rod through it. Welded to the frame, Cooter said.
Will it affect handling your speed? Rachel asked.
A little, but I trashed the guts. No headliner, no carpet, no passenger seat or rear bench. The whole thing's torn out except the radio. I put it on the scale and weighed it. You're not that much heavier than you were before I chopped you up, and Dodge gave you power to spare, Cooter explained.
Anything done to the engine?
I'd prefer not to fuck with perfection, as the Lord Jesus and Mopar intended it, but I did make one little change for now. I was hoping I'd find a way to make this baby mine, and that didn't happen. But I was collecting parts for it anyway, hoping somehow it would. I didn't have anything else to put 'em on, so I gave you a birthday present. Brand new dual exhaust. Should give you a couple extra horses to help haul that metal around, Cooter explained.
Rachel bent down to look under the rear of the car and spotted the gleaming chrome of a completely new exhaust system shining in the darkness of the underside of the Polara. Cooter, I don't know how to thank you, she said.
You used to work at Hellhole, right? The strip club down the street? Cooter asked.
Yeah, Rachel said, wondering where he was going with that.
You introduced me to one of them fine-ass little stripper friends of yours, and we'll call it square. Took me weeks to find the perfect pipes for that job. Never would have got it done before your first trip if I wasn't hoarding for this project car, he said.
I'll see what I can do. She wasn't sure if she meant it or not. On the one hand, she would do anything to help someone get laid who handed her the keys to a shiny new ride with custom exhaust. On the other hand, she wasn't sure if Cooter was any of the girls' type, or if he was anyone's type. She'd get him a date, not a miracle. Rachel's eyes followed the crash piping to the front of the car, where the bull bars were reinforced, similar to the Crown Vics, but with noticeably more style and care, following the grim and aggressive lines of the Polara's signature Dodge double headlight face. It reminded her of some kind of predatory cat, with a metal jaw bolted to its snout. Mounted on the roof were a pair of old Browning machine guns, similar to the ones on the Crown Vics. Rachel could see that they were bolted to the frame near the A-pillars for stability, and the belts fed through a slot with a gasket in the roof.
Those were a special treat, Cooter said, noticing her looking at the guns. Normally I don't work that hard to integrate exterior weapon mounts, but if I was going to do this car, I was going to do it right. On the Crown Vics, the hoppers are exterior. You got to get out of the car to change them. These babies are piped down through the roof into the cabin with an automatic feed. You just shove the belts into a slot and they suck right up into it. It don't even have to unbuckle your seatbelt. Normally I save that kind of work for after you prove you got chops.
What kind of gun is that? Rachel asked.
Old school. Originally an M19 1930 caliber machine gun, but these are the Mark 21s, Cooter said.
What the fuck does that mean?
They're converted to 7.62. We got them bulk surplus from the Navy and put them on all the new driver cars. Story is, back in the 60s, the U.S. military had piles of them from World War II, and they switched them up and changed some parts to make them eat the NATO round when we went to Vietnam. It's a good conversion. You can get bullets for it just about anywhere in the Western world. That's why we use them so much, Henry said.
You some kind of weird war nerd?
No, I actually read that out of a book I borrowed from Cooter when I asked him the same question when he did my car, Henry shrugged.
We use a lot of bargain basement surplus firepower around here. When you get some money, you can change it up if you like, but most folks in sedans and coupes keep the old girls around. They're cheap and they work good. and they're easy to feed. You need a bigger ride if you want to upgrade to the Ma Deuce, Cooter added.
The Ma Douche?
Deuce. Like 2, M2. It's a really big fucking gun. Dodgy Band's got one on his van. Shit turns zombies into SpaghettiOs.
You guys really know a lot about guns, Rachel said.
Oh, no. No, Cooter does. I just want to know which ones cause fuckers to explode in tomato soup like a cheap horror movie when I shoot them, Henry admitted.
Can I take this for a spin around the track? Rachel asked.
I was afraid you were more interested in guns than cars for a second there. It was starting to worry me, Cooter said. I'd beat Henry within an inch of his horns if he told me the first time you drove it was a combat mission. You should know your wheels. One condition, though.
Name it, Rachel said.
You let me ride shotgun.
But you ripped out everything but the driver's seat. Where will you sit? Rachel asked.
I've got a racing helmet, a lawn chair, and a death wish, Cooter said.
Before Rachel could protest further, Cooter opened the passenger door and was running ratchet straps through the bars of the roll cage to tie down the legs of a lawn chair. Once she realized he really meant it and there was no stopping him, she turned to Henry and shrugged.
We've all done dumber shit, like joining Hell Patrol, Henry smiled.
That's not encouraging, Rachel said.
Yeah, it's funnier when you're drunk.
You've driven drunk? Wait, never mind. Don't answer that question. I'm not sure if I'm ready to know how professional or unprofessional this whole fucking thing actually is. Cooter finished strapping the lawn chair into the car. Rachel noticed that his redneck engineering did actually look suspiciously solid. Suspicious in that it looked like he knew what he was doing and had done it before. Rachel got into the driver's seat, put the seatbelt on, and Cooter got in as well. He pulled the keys out of his pocket and gave them to her. She put them in the ignition, turned the key. The Polara made a throaty rumble as it roared to life. Rachel was so excited she lost all concern for Cooter's safety. Finally, she had her own car. Her own race car. All hers. And if demons weren't real and nearly destroyed the world, she would swear that this was what a demon would sound like. Everything in the back of her head felt far away, like it was dropping out of sight over the horizon in a rearview mirror. She felt free, powerful. Her childhood dream of being a race car driver was just a gas pedal away from being real. It was a race car, a real race car, better than a race car. It was a vintage 1969 Highway Patrol Interceptor, which back then was fundamentally the same thing as a race car. One that hunted down other race cars.
You hear that shit? Cooter asked. You never get over the sound of a Mopar firing up.
Rachel decided he was right. She hit the gas, cut the wheel, and turned the Polara onto the track, and let it crawl to a stop as she let off the pedal. She threw the car into park, and then set herself up for the burnout of a lifetime. You got spare tires for this fucker? She asked Cooter.
As if I didn't smoke all the tread off this bitch testing out the new exhaust. I'd be fucking offended if you didn't do a burnout. Woo! Cooter explained.
Rachel was more than happy to oblige. She smoked the shit out of the tires and laid down a rubber road to freedom. The first straight up the track was long. As the car lurched into motion and she saw the needles launch up the dials in the dash, her cares melted away. It was as good as sex, maybe better. The last time she had felt so weightless, so carefree, floating above her own body on a cloud of pleasure, Johnny was inside of her for the first time. This was what it felt like to be a race car driver, Rachel knew. She took the first turn too fast, but was surprised at how well the Polara handled. It was a full-size Dodge from the late 60s, which meant that it was effectively a boat on wheels, but the police upgrades to the brakes and suspension made it more butter smooth than any V8 land yacht had any right to be. It reminded her of those old mattress commercials where a glass of red wine was on one side of the bed while a woman in a nightgown jumped up and down on the other side without disturbing it. "Holy fuck, it's smooth," Rachel cried over the engine.
"Glad you fucking noticed. I was afraid this bitch would be wasted on one of you tiefling fuckers,"
Cooter shouted through his race helmet. Rachel took turn 2 with more control, letting off the gas into the curve and riding it out without the brake, and the Polara rewarded her expertise. Cooter seemed pleased as well. When she came out of the curve, he was saying something, but she put her foot on the floor and didn't hear him over the engine. There was no noise dampening in the cabin of the Polara. Anything that would have prevented or muffled the sound of the engine was stripped out. It was like a beating heart on the other side of the firewall. Rachel didn't want it any other way. She took turn 3 and 4 likewise, sprinted down the straight past Henry, who looked like a red blur as she went by. She was fast. She was so fast. She hadn't gone this fast since Johnny let her drive the GTA. Whoops, sorry, the GTO. No, faster! Johnny's GTO was a half-broke piece of shit. It was a nice car once, and it could be a nice car again, but it wasn't when she drove it. The Polara, on the other hand, was a bitch in heat, in her prime. Whatever Cooter had done to it had turned it into an asphalt sex god. Rachel put 3 laps on the Polara, and only stopped when she noticed that one of Cooter's ratchet straps was coming loose, and he was holding onto the window frame to stay in his seat. He didn't seem to mind this, but Rachel did. If he really was that fucking good at making the Polara run that well, she didn't want him to get hurt. She pulled the car up to the line and shut it off in front of Henry.
"Well, I'll be fucked," Cooter said, pulling the helmet off. "You have no idea how happy that made me."
"You have no idea how happy that made me," Rachel said.
"You really can drive."
"Yeah, I got bad news,"
Henry said, leaning on the driver's side window.
"Compared to that, killing zombies is a real snooze fest."
Rachel hung around for another hour. Cooter showed her where all the other important stuff was, like how to feed the guns and fire them, how they were cambered to fire down her sight lines on the fenders, how to use the CB radio in the dash. Finally, once he was confident she could do everything, he pronounced that she would be allowed to drive the car home. "Really?" Rachel asked. "I mean, it's not even really that far, just a couple blocks, but are you sure?"
"It's your damn car. You need as much time behind the wheel as possible before you go fuck it up," he said.
"You heard him," Henry added. "Be back here at 0900 tomorrow. We'll gas up, load up, and head out. I'll let you borrow some of my toys."
Rachel was beside herself with excitement. She lost all concern for her own safety. All her suspicions and doubts had been chased away by the Polara. It was the confirmation, the proof of everything she wanted to believe. She wasn't sure about anything until she saw it for herself, but so far, everything had happened exactly as the Hell Patrol people said it would. They were as good as their word. More importantly, if they were as good as their word, then zombie hunting really would be easy money, just like Henry said it would be. She felt as if someone was finally looking out for her. Instead of being a victim in her own life that was incapable of doing anything right, she finally felt like she mattered and that things were going good. People thought she could drive. She proved that she could. They gave her a car, a badass car, more badass than any car she ever fantasized about behind the wheel of a go-kart or a Volkswagen. Her stalker, wherever he was either in intensive care or dead in a ditch. Rachel hoped it was the latter, but she'd settle for the former, as long as he was in terrible pain and left her alone. Finally, there was Johnny, who never ceased to blow her mind every morning and every night. Rachel wanted to hit the highway and put miles on the odometer. She wanted to fly out to the Mojave and race the roadrunners. Were there roadrunners in the Mojave? Did the demons drive them to extinction if there were? She didn't know. She just wanted to tear up some asphalt in the middle of nowhere. But first, she wanted to make Johnny jealous. What better way to start a good night of bad romance than to pull up to his apartment in her badass new wheels? Maybe she would take him to a drive-thru and make him sit on the floor of the car while she bought him a cheeseburger. That would be hilarious. Rachel said goodbye to Henry and Cooter, got in the Polara, and drove out through the security gate. She gunned the Polara through the first light that turned green on the empty street to blow a quarter mile, and before she could even exhale, she was already at Johnny's doorstep. She parked in front of his place, pulled out her phone, and dialed. It rang, and went to voicemail, which was strange. Johnny always picked up. He was always worried about her, or always ready to fuck. He never left her hanging. It wasn't like him. Rachel looked up, and then wished she hadn't. The curtains of the living room window of Johnny's ground floor apartment were wide open. Rachel was staring directly at a pair of gorgeous, round, perfectly sculpted breasts. A pair of breasts she wouldn't mistake anywhere. They were bouncing up and down, glazed in the shiny sweat of intense sex. It was Valerie, her gloss black tiefling skin unmistakable through the window. She was riding Johnny Cowgirl on the living room sofa. Jealousy and rage welled up inside Rachel. Her cat eyes flashed. She turned the key in the ignition. The Polara fired up. She released the parking brake and tore off into the street. The fucking homewrecker! Rachel drove down the street, not planning on going anywhere in particular. She was furious, and even worse, she knew she didn't have any right to be, and that made it worse. She knew she and Johnny had never talked about being exclusive. She knew that he had fucked all the girls from the club, had fucked them all before her. She was the last one on the line. He had told her himself. She knew he had a toxic dick and that this moment was inevitable, but she kept putting it off, kept living in the moment. Someone had told her something once. Was it Johnny himself? Maybe it was one of the girls. It didn't matter who said it, it was still true. Guys with good dick didn't get good dick by being monogamous. Someone had taught him how to fuck, and he was practicing. It was Dr. Atwood, by the way. Rachel mistook it for another person, but it was definitely Dr. Atwood. Of all the fucking girls in the world, it had to be her. It had to be Valerie, Rachel growled, in a voice more sinister than the rumble of her V8. Valerie was the last girl that Rachel wanted to think about Johnny with. Rachel's relationship with Valerie was complicated, and was about to get more complicated. They were friends, but Valerie was Rachel's opposite in every way she could think of. Rachel was porcelain white and Valerie was coal black. Rachel was an A-cup. Valerie had tits that could stop 4 lanes of traffic. Rachel was a freak, but she kept it in the bedroom. Valerie was a freak, and out and proud about it. And she didn't need to ride cowgirl in the living room window to prove it. Rachel was introverted and reserved. Valerie was fucking in front of an open window, if that was any indication. Even worse, Valerie was more than friendly with her. She'd always made it plain that she wanted Rachel to do strip shows with her, always trying to recruit her. And the subtext of her pitch was always that it could, and would be, more than just business. Rachel was afraid that if she walked in on them in that moment, Valerie would try to make it a threesome. Johnny wouldn't try to stop her, of course. I knew he had all of them, but if I was going to walk in on that, could it have been literally anybody but Valerie? She mumbled to herself. Rachel needed to think. She needed to clear her head. 2 minutes ago, she was on top of the world. Then, her best friend was on top of her boyfriend. Fuck. He was never a boyfriend. Of course he wasn't. She knew why. This was why. This right here. Being mad at herself for being mad about it in the first place was worse than being mad about it at all. She felt like she had shoved a penny in an electrical socket or put her hand over an open flame. Fuck this, whatever, I've got money. Rachel drove the Polara to the nearest drive-thru restaurant. She didn't care which one it was. She didn't have a preference. Fast food was a luxury she couldn't afford in her previous life. But now she was hungry. It was fast. It was something to do. And Henry said she'd have money soon. She ordered a cheeseburger combo and then parked the Polara in the adjacent lot. Got out. Ate her meal off the trunk of the car, sitting on the rear bumper. It was then she realized that those stumps on her back were twitching again, squirming, almost as if they were growing, pushing on her skin. The sensation nearly destroyed Rachel's appetite, but she bought the food, so she forced herself to eat it. After all, she wasn't rich yet. It happens when I experience extreme emotions, Rachel said out loud to nobody, alone in the parking lot. It was true. When she stopped the God damn it. It was true. When she shot the stalker, her first night with Johnny, when she saw him cheating. Not technically cheating, but it hurt like it was. Wrath, lust, jealousy. Whatever the squirming was, it was triggered by aggressive emotion. Rachel didn't know what that meant. Maybe it didn't mean anything. Maybe every tiefling felt like that, and she had never talked to anyone else about it. Maybe it was something to talk to the Hell Patrol shrink about. She decided she didn't care right now. She had a full tank of gas, and Henry had mentioned that tomorrow they would refill it before they went on a zombie hunt. It was time for Rachel to clock some hours on the only therapy that she knew really worked for her: driving. She threw the greasy fast food wrappers in a trash can, sucked up the last of the soft drink, wiped her mouth with a napkin, and put the key in the ignition and her foot on the floor. A thirsty V8 would kill a tank of gas fast enough.
Whoa! Chapter 11 recap, baby! Ow! Hell yeah! I got to ride in the Dodge! It ain't mine, but at least I got to ride in it. I guess that's the best I'm gonna get. Life is hard when you're Jim Jack Cooter.
Thank you, Cooter. Alright, Chapter 11 recap. So the first thing that happens is Henry takes Rachel to go see her car. And he goes, hey, we're zombie hunting tomorrow. By the way, that is next chapter. That is actually next chapter. Chapter 12, We Kill Zombies. I know. I've been teasing and promising for a long time. It's finally happening. Chapter 12, we're going to hit the undead with a car. The thing you came here to see and waited 12 chapters for. All right. Okay, so they go to see her car. There's a lot of car porn and a lot of gun porn. Rachel gets in the car and test drives it with Cooter in it. When Cooter sees how Rachel drives, it earns Rachel respect with Cooter, which is an important thing about Cooter, because Cooter has a fast mouth and he's definitely an asshole, but he does actually respect people based on merit, based on their skills and talents. So at least he's not actually the sexist, racist weirdo that somebody probably thinks he is, just because he has no filter and is a total dick. But Cooter does actually have feelings, and he is capable of being a decent human being. So good for Cooter. Okay. We don't actually see Jade at all in this chapter, but she's probably around somewhere. Jade works on the Japanese cars mostly, so that's why she's not in the scene. Okay, so after Rachel does the test drive with Cooter, she hangs out for a while, and Cooter shows her how to operate everything on the vehicle. The driving was the most important thing, because driving is central to Rachel's character. It's her therapy. It's the thing she's good at. It's the thing she's always loved since she was a child. So I intentionally like didn't write a bunch of like fucking manual crap about how all the guns in the cars work and where exactly all the buttons are wired and all the shit like that. That's not important to the story. All we need to know is that Cooter shows Rachel how it works. I didn't think that was gonna be a big deal, and it would probably bore the shit out of a lot of people who aren't into the car and gun porn. Speaking of stuff for people who aren't into car and gun porn, how about that relationship drama? So after Rachel gets the car out, she stops at Johnny's to go gloat about the car and sees him fucking Valerie in the living room window. Now, of course, this tells us something about Rachel. Up until recently, Rachel never confronted her problems head on. And so Rachel knew from the start that she and Johnny were toxic, and it was gonna be toxic, and that other women were in the picture. And she kind of just accepted it out of hand, just because, well, okay, fine, you can't pick up those other bitches if I'm the one that's always on your dick. And that was kind of the system she was operating under. But of course, the guy works in a strip club, and she stopped working at a strip club, so she stopped being around the other girls, and he didn't. So yeah, of course it was easy for him to find another hookup the minute she left the building. So Rachel's pissed about that. And we're going to see what she's going to do about it, but this was an issue that we all knew was coming. This was going to happen. And then it finally did. So, even when Rachel actually starts winning, she still loses a little, but this is going to come to a head. And now that Rachel, actually has a spine, she's going to rip Johnny's head off. Okay. So that happens, and Rachel drives off in a huff. It's then when she realizes, ultimately, that she confirms it. She finally confirms it with herself. This is something that she suspected for a long time. But we finally have confirmation that Rachel feels the strange demonic twitches whenever she feels extreme emotions. So, typically the ones she names are, sexual ecstasy, wrath, jealousy. Any extreme emotional state triggers the demonic twitch. So now Rachel actually has an idea of where those feelings are coming from when the twitch starts. They've also worked as a kind of a spider sense too. So whenever she has paranoid premonitions about the stalker, she also twitches then, and that's saved her ass before. All right, what's going on in Chapter 12? We're actually going to get to kill zombies, which is great. Again, talked about teasing that and tugging your dick for a while now. We're going to meet new characters. We're going to meet Dajiban and Lipstick, who are Henry's partners. And they are veteran hell patrollers with really cool cars. Yeah, there's some cool demonology shit coming up next chapter too, but you know what? I'm not going to sit here and talk about it and spoil it. We're going to let that actually be something that you discover in the book itself, as opposed to me just shitting on it in the recap so that it's not a surprise. But yeah, it's closing up. We're going to kill zombies, and then after that, we're going to talk to a demon, then we're going to kill demons. Then we're going back to the strip club, and then somebody's going to die. And that's going to be the end of the book. So thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. Come back next time for Murdering Zombies in Hell Patrol Chapter 12. Unfortunately, the next chapter will not feature the American hero Jim Jack Cooter. So it'll suck. But, listen anyways. Do it for me, okay? Do it for your demon goth waifu.